What would you do if your own sister told you that you weren't impressive enough to attend her dinner party, and then, 2 weeks later, found out that you were the federal judge assigned to a case that could destroy her husband's entire company? That's not a plot twist from a TV show. That is exactly what happened to me. And I want to tell you every single detail. The email came on a Tuesday morning while I was sitting in my chambers reviewing briefs for a securities fraud trial. My name is Caroline Wright. I'm a United States District Court judge for the Northern District of California. My desk overlooks the San Francisco skyline, the Bay Bridge, the water, the city I've served for years from a bench where I carry a lifetime appointment. I was going through case files the way I do every morning, coffee at my elbow, when my phone buzzed with a message from my younger sister, Nicole. Subject line: Anniversary Party Update. Caroline, I need to talk to you about the October dinner. Ryan and I have been thinking about the guest list, and we feel it would be better if you didn't come to this one. Ryan's business partners will be there, along with several board members from Nexus Global. These are very important relationships for his career. You work for the government in some kind of legal role, which is totally fine, but it's just not the same world as what Ryan does. I don't want things to get awkward with career comparisons. You understand, right? We'll do lunch soon, just us. Love you. I read it twice. Then I set my phone face down on my mahogany desk and looked out at the bay. Nicole is 3 years younger than me. She married Ryan Huang about 2 years ago. He's the CEO of Nexus Global Solutions, a mid-sized software company that had recently gone public. The IPO had made Ryan very comfortable financially. Not billionaire wealthy, but comfortable enough that Nicole had left her marketing career behind, and now spent her days organizing charity galas and renovating their home in Pacific Heights. Ryan was her whole identity. His success had become her measure of worth. I hadn't made a big deal of explaining my career to Nicole. The truth is, I had tried. When I was appointed to the federal bench 4 years ago at age 36, I called her and told her the news. She said, "Oh, like traffic court?" I said, "Federal court." She said, "That's nice," and then asked if I was seeing anyone. That was the end of that conversation. My family had always treated my career like background noise. Law school at Stanford. Clerking for a Ninth Circuit judge. 8 years as an assistant U.S. attorney. Appointment to the federal bench. To them, it was just government work. Nothing as visible as running a company. I picked up my phone and typed back, "I understand. Enjoy your party." Simple. Clean. I didn't tell her what was coming. She was going to find out on her own. 3 days after Nicole's email, my law clerk James knocked and walked into my chambers carrying a fresh stack of case assignments. He set them on my desk and tapped the one on top. "You're getting the Nexus Global patent case, Judge. It's going to be big, $340 million in damages claimed. Neural Innovations is suing Nexus for patent infringement. The CEO is personally named as a defendant. A guy named Ryan Huang." The room felt very still for a moment. "I know him," I said. "He's married to my sister." James's eyes went wide. "Do you need to recuse yourself?" I opened the file and read carefully. Nexus Global Solutions was accused of copying proprietary algorithms from a competitor, Neural Innovations, and incorporating them directly into their flagship product. The plaintiff was seeking $340 million plus injunctive relief that could shut down Nexus's main revenue stream entirely. Ryan was named personally because he had allegedly directed his engineers to study Neural Innovations code, following a failed merger negotiation. If the jury found willful infringement, damages could triple. "I'll review the recusal standards," I said. Being related by marriage to a defendant doesn't automatically require recusal, as long as I can be impartial. And I can be. James gave me a long look. "You're sure about this? Schedule a chambers conference for next week. Both legal teams." After he left, I sat alone with the file. "You work for the government in some legal capacity." I thought about that phrase. I was a United States District Court judge. I had lifetime tenure. Last year alone I had handled a class action against a pharmaceutical giant, an antitrust case against a major tech firm, and a complex securities fraud prosecution. My rulings had affected billions of dollars and shaped legal precedent. And my sister thought I had some kind of government desk job. Perhaps that was the real tragedy, not that she dismissed me, but that she had never once been curious enough to find out who I actually was. On September 29th, both legal teams arrived for the Chamber's conference. The plaintiff's attorneys came first, 3 sharp litigators from one of San Francisco's most prestigious firms. Then the defense team. And then Ryan Huang walked into my chambers. He looked exactly the way Nicole had described him over the years. Confident, polished, clearly accustomed to being the most important person in any room. He had met me exactly 4 times. The engagement party, the wedding, and 2 family dinners. At every one of those occasions, he had been polite in the way powerful people are polite to those they consider beneath them. Warm smile, quick exit from the conversation. Eyes always scanning for someone more useful to talk to. He didn't recognize me when he walked in. Why would he? I was in my robes. The seal of the United States was mounted on the wall behind my desk. My nameplate read, Honorable Caroline Wright, United States District Court. I watched his face as he took his seat. Then I watched him look at the nameplate. Really look at it. He made a small sound, not quite a word, not quite a cough. Mr. Huang, I said. Are you all right? He was staring at me now. Judge Wright. Caroline Wright. You're your Nicole's sister. I am. I kept my voice perfectly even. I've reviewed the recusal standards. My relationship to Mr. Huang is by marriage, not blood. I have no financial interest in the outcome of this case. I can preside impartially. However, if either party wishes to file a motion for recusal, you're welcome to do so. The plaintiff's attorney, Ms. Sandra Park, spoke immediately. The plaintiff has no objection to you presiding, Your Honor. Ryan's lead attorney looked at his client. Ryan swallowed. No concerns, he said. Then we'll proceed. For the next 40 minutes, I ran that conference the way I run every conference, efficiently, with precision, setting strict deadlines, making it clear that this trial would move on my schedule. Ryan sat almost completely silent the entire time, staring at the table, or at me with the expression of a man who had just discovered that gravity worked differently than he thought. When the conference ended and the other attorneys left, Ryan lingered at the door. Could I have a moment, Judge Wright? I nodded. The door closed. I didn't know, he said. Nicole never told me you were a federal judge. Did you ever ask what I did? He opened his mouth, closed it. I assumed you were a government attorney, some kind of lawyer. I was an assistant U.S. attorney for 8 years. Then I was appointed to the federal bench. Nicole made it sound like. He trailed off. Like it wasn't at the same level as running a tech company. I finished. That's exactly why you uninvited me from your anniversary party. His face flushed. I went along with it. I didn't push back. That was wrong. This case will be handled exactly the same way any case in my courtroom is handled, I said. Fairly. By the law. Nothing more, nothing less. He nodded and left. That evening my phone rang. Nicole's name on the screen. Caroline, what the hell? Michael just told me you're the judge on his case. The one that could destroy his company. Why didn't you tell me? When would I have told you, Nicole? Before or after you uninvited me from your party, because my government job wasn't impressive enough for your dinner guests? Silence. That's not. It is actually. You made it very clear that my career didn't belong in the same room as Ryan's business partners. And now you're upset that my career happens to involve presiding over his case. You're a federal judge. You never said you were a federal judge. I told you when I was appointed 4 years ago. You asked if it was like traffic court. I said federal court. You said that's nice and asked if I was dating anyone. More silence. Then, you never make it sound important. You never talk about your work. Every time I try, you change the subject. When I told you about the pharmaceutical class action, you interrupted me to talk about your kitchen renovation. When I mentioned testifying before Congress about sentencing reform, you asked if I'd met any celebrities. I didn't know it was a big deal. It's not about it being a big deal. It's about you never being interested enough to find out. She asked me to recuse myself. Step aside, get a different judge, do it for family harmony. And I thought about that for a long moment. Not about my career, but about every defendant and plaintiff who had ever walked into my courtroom trusting that they'd be heard fairly, regardless of who they knew or who knew them. Stepping aside to make my family comfortable would itself be a form of bias. I couldn't do it. Then his lawyers should build a strong defense, I said. That's how the legal system works. She hung up. I sat in my apartment looking at the city lights and felt the full weight of the choice I had made. It was going to cost me what little was left of my relationship with my sister. I knew that. And I still couldn't do anything differently. The next 6 weeks were a storm of pretrial motions. Ryan's team filed a motion to dismiss, arguing the patents were invalid. I denied it. That was a question for the jury. The plaintiff filed motions to exclude certain expert testimony. I granted 2, denied 3. Every ruling I issued was scrutinized by the tech press, analyzed by legal blogs, picked apart for any hint of favoritism. They found none. I was meticulous, scrupulously fair in both directions. Nicole stopped speaking to me. She blocked my number. My parents called, confused and upset, caught between their 2 daughters. My father said, "You have to do your job, sweetheart." My mother said, "Can't you just give it to someone else?" For peace in the family. There was no peace to preserve. There never had been, just the comfortable illusion of it, maintained by holiday dinners and the unspoken agreement that we wouldn't look too closely at anything real. On November 20th, 2 weeks before trial, Ryan's attorney requested an emergency conference. Both teams crowded into my chambers. The plaintiff had made a settlement offer, $175 million plus a licensing agreement. Ryan's board was pushing him to consider it. I looked at Ryan across the table. He was rigid, jaw tight, the stress of the last 2 months written all over his face. This was the moment everything hinged on. If only he could have seen it clearly. But sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to be honest about the strength of your own position. "Mr. Huang," I said carefully, "this is your decision, not mine. But trials are unpredictable. Juries are unpredictable. Settlement gives you certainty." He looked at me. "Do you think we infringed?" "What I think is irrelevant. The jury will decide based on the evidence." I paused. "But I will say this. The plaintiff has strong evidence. Your engineers access their code. Your product contains similar algorithms. Whether that rises to the level of patent infringement is a very close question." Ryan and his attorney exchanged a long look. As they were filing out, Ryan turned back. "If this were your company, would you settle?" I should have deflected. But something in his face, the fear behind the polish, made me step briefly out from behind the bench and answer as a human being rather than a judge. If it were my company, I would ask myself one question. Am I certain enough of victory to risk losing everything? Because that's what going to trial means. Only you can answer whether that risk is worth it. He nodded, and he left. On November 28th, Nexus Global accepted the settlement. $175 million plus a licensing agreement worth another $20 million over 5 years. It would hurt the company, layoffs, a plummeting stock price, real financial pain. But it would survive. I held the approval hearing on December 1st, reviewed every term, confirmed that both parties were entering the agreement freely. Ryan appeared in court looking exhausted, his suit hanging a little loose, the easy confidence of October nowhere in sight. "This case is dismissed with prejudice," I said. "We're adjourned." As the room cleared, Ryan stopped at the door. "Thank you, Your Honor. I didn't do anything except approve a fair settlement. You and the plaintiff made the decision." "Still, thank you. I thought that would be it. Case closed, family estrangement locked in. Both of us moving forward in separate lives." Then on December 10th, Nicole showed up at the courthouse. She had never visited me at work before. Didn't even know where my chambers were. My assistant called me to say she was in the lobby asking for me. When she walked into my office, she looked different. Thinner. Tired. The expensive clothes she always wore looked like a costume she'd borrowed rather than something that belonged to her. She sat down across from my desk and looked at her hands. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry, Caroline." "For what specifically?" "For not seeing you. for not understanding what you do, for thinking Ryan's job was more important than yours, for all of it. She pressed her fingers together. The settlement is destroying us financially. The board is talking about removing Ryan as CEO. And all I can think about is the fact that I told you not to come to my dinner party, because your government job wasn't impressive enough. She told me she had come to the settlement hearing, sat in the gallery and watched. She saw me command the room, both legal teams, lawyers who charged over $1,000 an hour, all of them deferring to my judgment. She said she realized she had absolutely no idea who I was. Her own sister. I called Mom afterward, she said. I was angry. I said you could have done something, helped us somehow. And Mom said, Nicole, your sister is one of the most respected federal judges in California. She can't compromise her integrity for anyone, even family. That's who she is. That's who she has always been. She wiped her eyes. Mom knows you better than I do, and I don't even have an excuse for that. You never asked, I said simply. I know. She exhaled slowly. I was so wrapped up in Ryan's success, in being the wife of someone important. I think I didn't want to see you because seeing you clearly meant admitting that you had built something real and meaningful entirely on your own and I hadn't. That was easier to ignore than to face. We sat in silence for a long moment, the city spread out behind my window, the afternoon light going golden over the bay. The settlement was the right call, I said finally. If you'd gone to trial, you might have lost everything. This way the company survives. I know. Ryan's attorney said you gave him the right question to ask himself. About whether he was certain enough to risk everything. She looked at me with something new in her expression. You helped him, even after everything we did to you. He's your husband, I said. I didn't want to see you hurt. You should have let us suffer. We deserved it. Maybe, but you're still my sister. She started crying then, not the controlled, dabbing the corner of the eye kind of tears. Real crying. The kind that comes when something that has been held back a long time finally breaks through. I don't deserve forgiveness, she said. Probably not, I said with a small smile. But you're getting it anyway. Eventually. Eventually. This doesn't get fixed overnight, Nicole. You've spent years not seeing me. I've spent years feeling invisible in my own family. We can rebuild, but it takes real work. From both of us. Whatever it takes. I mean it. She wiped her face and looked up at me. Can I start right now? Can I ask about your work? Really ask. Really listen. So I told her. All of it. Law school. 8 years prosecuting white-collar criminals as an assistant U.S. attorney. The cases that had challenged me and changed me. What it meant to be appointed to the federal bench at 36. One of the youngest in the district. What it felt like to hold people's fates in your hands and carry the responsibility of trying to be fair in an imperfect system. She listened to every word, asked real questions, wanted to understand. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. You're kind of a badass. I laughed. Federal judges aren't supposed to be badasses. Well, you are. And I'm sorry I never knew it. Over the following months, Nicole and I rebuilt. She came to my chambers once a month for lunch. She attended a public hearing and sat in the gallery watching me work. She read articles about my cases and came back with thoughtful questions. Ryan struggled. The settlement damaged Nexus Global's reputation badly, and in March the board forced him out as CEO. He took a COO position at a smaller company, a significant step down. The big house in Pacific Heights went on the market. The luxury cars were sold. Nicole got a job, an actual job in nonprofit marketing. The life they had built around Ryan's success got smaller, and in a strange way, they both became more human inside it. In April, they had me over for dinner at their new apartment. Ryan cooked pasta. He set down his fork partway through the meal and looked at me steadily. I need to say this properly. I'm sorry for dismissing your career, for never asking who you were or what you did. I was arrogant, and honestly, I was sexist. I wouldn't have made those assumptions about a brother-in-law who was a federal judge. But a sister-in-law, I just assumed it didn't matter that much. I'm working on that. We both are, Nicole said, reaching across the table for my hand. 2 years after the Nexus Global case, I was elevated to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Circuit judges set precedent affecting millions of people across the entire western United States. My confirmation hearing was intense. Senators questioning my judicial philosophy, my decisions, my record. Nicole sat in the gallery for every session. When one senator praised my commitment to fairness and thoughtful application of the law, I saw her smile from across the room with something that looked like genuine pride. The confirmation went through. I was sworn in on a crisp October morning. 200 people attended. Nicole and Ryan sat in the front row next to my parents. My mother cried. My father beamed. And Nicole looked at me with something I had never seen from her before. Real understanding of who I was and what I had built. At the reception, I heard her introducing me to people. This is my sister, Caroline Wright. She was just confirmed to the Ninth Circuit. She's one of the youngest appellate judges in the country. Not my sister who works for the government. Not vague references to a legal career. Clear, proud, specific facts. That night at a small family dinner, Nicole stood and raised her glass. Her voice was steady, even though her eyes weren't. I want to say something. Caroline, I spent years choosing not to see you. Not because you were invisible, because I was threatened by you. By your intelligence, your discipline, your certainty about who you were. I was too insecure to acknowledge that my little sister had accomplished more than I ever would on her own terms. I'm sorry it took a $340 million lawsuit for me to finally pay attention. But I'm grateful, more grateful than I know how to say, that you gave me a second chance. I stood and hugged her. Always, I said. No matter what. Driving home alone later, I thought about justice. In the courtroom, justice meant applying the law fairly, giving everyone an equal chance to be heard regardless of their connections. In life, justice was more complicated. It meant being seen for who you really were. It meant having your work recognized rather than dismissed. It meant being valued not despite your choices, but because of them. I had had professional respect for years, the esteem of colleagues, public recognition. What I hadn't had was my family actually knowing me. Now finally, I had both. The ruling I was proudest of in my entire career wasn't issued from the bench. It was the decision to give my sister another chance. To believe that people could change, could grow, could choose to see what they had spent years ignoring. That required a different kind of justice than anything in my courtroom. One that balanced accountability with mercy, truth with grace, and firm boundaries with the willingness to forgive. We were all still learning. But we were learning together. And sometimes, that is the most important verdict of all. If this story hit home, if you've ever felt invisible in the place where you should have felt most seen, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more true stories just like this, because the truth about who people really are has a way of coming out. One way or another.